recording live from the Lucky Sevens Lounge in the basement of the Dine, Drink, Travel World Headquarters in the dusty, barren wastelands of far west Texas. This is Dine, Drink, Vegas, the podcast by and for people stuck at home who would rather be in the land of neon signs and bad decisions. My name is John, also known as the Baller on a Budget, and I am your host as we launch into episode 2, where we test out new audio equipment and hopefully don't sound like we're underwater. We're going to talk baseball, we're going to dive into the drink of the day, and update you on what's new on our YouTube channel. And now, here comes the founder of Dine, Drink, Travel, the king of comps, the leader in the luxury lounge, the high roller of the high plains, the man who is always eagerly waiting for the limo driver to take him to his hotel. It's Bill. Come on in, Bill.
And that's not true. Sometimes I'm waiting for the limo driver to take me somewhere else.
That's true. There's usually a pit stop on the way to the hotel. How are you, Bill?
I am doing good, mostly because I am enjoying this drink of the day. John, what is it that we're drinking?
So we know we have a baseball-themed episode today, and so our drink of the day is called the Cooperstown. Now, there's no official cocktail of baseball, and honestly, beer is really the drink of baseball, but we're cocktail people. The Cooperstown goes back to the Waldorf Astoria in New York City, if I could say that correctly, pre-Prohibition, and it is a variation of what we would call a perfect martini. Now, listeners, perfect in a cocktail doesn't mean it's just the way you like it. Most cocktails that use vermouth either use sweet or dry vermouth. Most martinis are dry. Most, say, Manhattans are sweet. But a cocktail that is called perfect is a blend, 50-50 blend of sweet and dry. So this is a perfect martini with gin, 2 parts gin, 1 part each of those vermouths, orange bitters instead of Angostura, and instead of an olive or a twist, an accent of mint leaves. So that's what we've got on hand. And this is a stirred and strained drink. Bill, what do you think?
So I'm picking up a lot of orange. I realize we put orange bitters in it because I watched you do it, but the amount of orange I'm picking up here seems disproportionate to the amount of bitters that we use. What am I picking up?
So you're getting the botanicals from the gin, the bitters, and the 2 vermouths playing off of each other. So there's a little bit of citrus in each of them in different ways. And it really is a drink that it sort of defies expectations to me. This is not what I thought it was going to taste like, but I'm here for it. Well,
and I could also see this being something that you would get at a baseball game. And I think the gin helps with that, but it tastes like a light and kind of refreshing summer drink. It's the first time I've ever tried one, but no, I like this a lot. It is citrus. I like the hint of sweet in it without it being a giant margarita glass that you drank when you were in college or something like that.
Absolutely. This is not a woo girl cocktail.
No.
This is definitely a drink for grown-ups. It's sophisticated. There's a lot of nuance. The mint leaves surprisingly add way more to the party than I thought they would.
So I am enjoying the mint, and I can taste the mint, but it seems to me to be less significant than the orange, right? Like the dominant flavor I'm getting here is orange.
And what I really like about this drink is, like baseball, this is a beverage that evolves over a long time. So it was great when we first made it, and it was ice cold. As it's warmed up and we've tried to play around with our audio, it's evolved and continued to be delicious.
It has. The other thing I like is its connection to the Waldorf Astoria, which is a hotel we're going to talk about a little bit later on when we talk about how to plan out your trip to watch baseball.
And I was hoping you would pick up on that because I know that you're a Captain Luxury and that's right up your alley. But let's jump to it. So, Bill, why don't you break down our Vegas baseball news?
So the big news is that the Oakland A's are going to be moving to Las Vegas no later than the 2027 season. This has been rumored for a long time. I've had limo drivers and cab drivers in Vegas telling me for the last 3 or 4 years, oh, no, the baseball stadium is definitely going there. Oh, no, it's definitely going there. Wait, no, it's over there. And only, a few of them were actually right about the location of the baseball stadium. But they all had the base point that the A's have been talking about this for a while. They were undergoing a dual process with the Oakland authorities to see if they could get a stadium built there. But they selected a piece of land which is directly across the highway from T-Mobile Arena and just a little bit north of Allegiant Stadium That final decision was announced Thursday, and it was a little bit of a weird deal. Like, there's some things I don't understand about real estate. They signed a definitive agreement to purchase the land instead of just purchasing the land. And I'm not going to lie, that's past my financial brain. I don't know why you would structure something that way. But they're going to build a 35,000-seat stadium with a partially retractable roof, which I'm glad they're doing. I mean, baseball is a summer sport, and Vegas is hot in July, or, I mean, most of the year, but certainly during the months that you're playing baseball. And I think that the mostly enclosed stadium is the way to go, while still allowing the possibility to open it on some pleasant nights. There's some mixed reports about exactly how large it will be. Major League Baseball is saying on MLB.com that it's a 35,000-seat stadium. A couple of media outlets are reported that it was a 30,000-seat stadium, but I'm going to go with the MLB number. And that is a little bit smaller than most major league stadiums. Most of the stadiums are something like 40 or 45,000 seats. I think my beloved Astros are at like 41,000.
That seems right.
Yeah, something like that in Minute Maid Park. So a little bit smaller. I'm betting they will also get it sold out pretty frequently, partially with locals and partially with tourists. There is one really big catch with this. I mean, construction doesn't happen overnight, and they're saying that the stadium is going to be true for the 2027 season, even if that winds up being correct, because who really knows, right? Construction projects take on a life of their own, but if they do, their lease in Oakland expires after the 2024 season, which begs the question of what they do for the 2025 and 2026 seasons. Possibilities would be extending their lease in Oakland for a couple of years, but for really good reasons. And I understand this. The Oakland authorities don't seem inclined to work with the A's right now.
Oh, I can't imagine why. Yeah.
Yeah, no, like, you know what? I'm going to spot the folks in Northern California, that one. That makes a lot of sense to me. Maybe moving to another temporary home, and maybe moving for a couple of seasons to the Aviators Stadium. The Aviators are the Angels AAA affiliate, which plays right there in Las Vegas. But either way, Major League Baseball has been telling them for a while, y'all got to do something. The Oakland County Coliseum is not sufficient for a Major League stadium. And yeah, they are moving to Vegas somewhere between 2025 and 2027.
So let's get into why you and I are so excited about this, because there's a long history of sports in Las Vegas, but we don't tend to go crazy about Vegas sports. You know, when the Raiders moved there, I thought about becoming a Raiders fan because I love going to Vegas. But I'm already a Cowboys fan. Why would I trade one franchise owned by a crazy family that is a shell of its former glory for another? Seems redundant. And then with the Knights, I guess I like the Knights as much as any other hockey team. And I know, you know, here in Texas, we have the Stars and they've had some success. But no native Texan actually understands hockey. If a Texan says they understand hockey, what we understand is we're allowed to drink beer and hope a fight happens. That's the extent of Texans.
And that is a lot of fun. I enjoy going to hockey for exactly that reason. But sure, I don't understand why one guy got a penalty and another didn't.
But you and I have both talked about, because you've been an Astros fan, I've been a Rangers fan.
Well, hold on, and back up for a second. I was historically a Rangers fan. Until I was 9, I lived back in deep northeast Texas. When we moved to San Angelo out in western Texas, I remained a Rangers fan. But then I married a girl from Houston. She informed me that we were now Astros fans in this house, and now I'm an Astros fan.
Right, and I get that. But you and I have both talked about moving our allegiance to the A's. I know for me as a Rangers fan, it's been really hard to root for the Texas Rangers for a while now. They haven't been good very many times in my life. And those windows seem to shut really fast, and the current ownership doesn't seem too concerned about that as long as they're selling seats. I just don't feel that loyalty that I used to. But I think, too, when you think about local minor league ball, you kind of have an A's connection.
So, yeah, we live in Midland. The AA affiliate for the A's is here. So that makes it really, really easy to switch allegiance to the Oakland team, or soon to be the Las Vegas team, because I don't know that I wouldn't be able to get to Las Vegas to see games more often than I can get to Houston or Dallas to see games. So in terms of switching allegiance, sure, that makes sense. Now, for most of our listeners who are presumably not here in the dry reaches of western Texas, you've got to make a different choice. But I think your fanship follows the team that you're able to actually go watch most of the time. And the thing about baseball, which fundamentally makes it a different game from football, to a lesser extent, a different game from basketball, is that you've got 81 home games a year. You've got a lot of home games. They are spread out across 6 months. And if you go to Vegas with any kind of frequency at all, you're going to almost accidentally wind up being there on a date when they've got a home game. Like you and I and some buddies of ours have a trip we take every year at Labor Day. About half the time, there's going to be baseball games over Labor Day weekend. Okay, there will always be baseball games. There will be home games over Labor Day weekend. Right. So that'll be a lot of fun. You and your wife are going this summer.
Yes.
If it was 2027, maybe that happens to be a week when they've got a homestand. I'm going with my buddy Ryan in May. Whatever. It's just there's going to be opportunities. And because you got 81 home games, each ticket doesn't have to cost $3 million. In non-Vegas cities, sometimes for midweek games, you can get a ticket for 10 or 20 bucks. Even if you inflate that to Vegas prices, it still winds up being the slowest way you can possibly lose money in the city of Las Vegas.
Absolutely. I mean, it's going to be cheaper than Chris Angel tickets and probably a better show. Yeah, and I think, too, there was something magical. Of course, you didn't grow up in Midland. I did. We used to have a Chicago Cubs AA affiliate here.
So I came to town to watch them with my granddad.
And one of the magical things about a AA team is you see rehab starts for starters in the majors, but you also see up and coming talent that very often blow up in AA, spend very little time in AAA. And so when I was a kid, you could see somebody like Sean Dunston in May, and by August, Harry Carey's talking about him on WGN, which, after Bozo, what else were you going to watch in the summer? So I've missed that connection to my local AA team and a national affiliate. And I think now that means a lot to me. So let's start talking about traveling to Vegas and watching baseball in person. So I know you had some pretty strong opinions on how to plan that trip. Where do you begin?
So, it kind of depends on whether you're trying to do a high-end trip or a budget trip. But me, I'll talk about the high-end trip. And as we were drinking a cocktail created at the Waldorf Astoria, I'll say, I don't know. The Waldorf Astoria is going to be walking distance. Certainly in the evening, it's going to be walking distance from this new stadium. I think I stay there because on the one hand, those hotel rooms can get pretty pricey, right? Like a basic room can run $600 or $800, but they can be cheaper during the middle of the week. And here's the other thing. If you're a Hilton Honors member, they offer really, really good redemption rates on your Hilton Honors points. Like I stayed there for the low cost of nothing. And I know you try to save money when you go to Vegas, but nothing's a good deal.
Nothing is a great deal.
I cashed in some Hilton Honors points, and it is probably the nicest property I've stayed at. I particularly enjoyed the fact that there wasn't any casino gambling. That made it a quieter spot. And if you want to gamble, that's fine. The Aria is 5 or 6 minutes, depending on the speed at which I waddle from one hotel to the other, right? So It's Vegas. If you want to gamble, somebody will help you out. But I think if I'm going to do a high-end trip to go watch baseball, I want to be able to walk, right? So that kind of geographically limits where I might stay. You've got other options. You could do something like the Aria, which is lovely. We got some video of it up on the YouTube channel and all of that. But I don't know. I think I stay at the Waldorf because that is a gorgeous place.
And I definitely could see that. And even though I normally am more of a budget traveler, I feel like if you didn't do the Waldorf, the nice thing about doing the Aria is that there's an indoor walkway from Aria to Park MGM. So assuming that they're going to have some way to deal with walking safely across I-10, you can walk indoor from Aria to Park MGM, come out that back door, and you are practically a stone's throw from where the stadium is going to be. So you can definitely do luxury from there with a nice indoor walk. But I think for me, this seems like a trip that would be a New York, or Park MGM trip. I think if you're a Mets or a Yankees fan, and
then
you can
peace
go
be
stay,
with you.
Go stay in fake New York and then go root for your obnoxious New York team across the street. Those would be my plays. You could do the Dirty Castle if you really need to. By the way,
you want to stay at Excalibur.
Listen,
you do.
My wife and I have our July trip, and I could have stayed. They offered me 3 nights free in the Dirty Castle, and even as cheap as I am, I passed that up, and we're going to stay at the remodeled rooms in New York, New York. You can also pretty easily stay at MGM Grand. Now, I don't care for the Grand, but I know a lot of people out there love MGM Grand, and that would be a good option too.
So, and y'all listen to this, I don't think you understand how cheap John is on stuff like this. Like sometimes we will plan entire evenings around who has a Groupon. And you know what? I wind up having a lovely evening every time, and I enjoy saving the money so I can lose it at the blackjack table just a minute later.
Right.
But if the Excalibur's too cheap for John to want to stay there, if Captain Groupon doesn't want to stay there, then I would probably listen to him and pick one of the other hotels.
I mean, it's not the recently demolished Travel Lodge, but it's not exactly on my list of places to stay. And folks, when I call myself the baller on a budget, Bill likes to emphasize the budget, and I am on a budget, but there's nothing baller about the Dirty Castle.
No.
And so there's got to be a compromise. I want to feel like I got a good deal. I don't want to feel like I'm slumming it in Vegas.
So we've done some footage on the YouTube channel of both the MGM Grand and the New York, New York. I don't have a whole lot on the Park MGM. But yeah, either one of those would be great. If you have almost any activity with the MGM Rewards program, the odds of getting a comped or a discounted room at either of those properties are pretty high. In our last podcast episode, we talked about the El Cortez. The weird thing is at both of those properties, I get significantly at both the New York, New York and the MGM Grand, I get better comp offers than I do in some of the places downtown. And yeah, that would absolutely present you some great budget options.
Yeah, and I'm not much of a gambler at all, and I haven't stayed at an MGM property in a year and a half. Now, granted, I do have an MGM credit card that gives me some points and keeps me at Pearl status, but they offered me 3 free nights at Excalibur, and I haven't darkened their door in quite a long time. So even though we've both of us have diminished the amount of time we spend at MGM properties, I think for baseball trips, they become very, very, very compelling.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and more than that, I just think Vegas becomes a more compelling summer vacation. So, folks, if y'all haven't been to Vegas before in the summer, it is hard to describe the oppressive level of heat. And the locals will say, but it's a dry heat. And that's true.
That's true.
But at some point, 114 is 114.
Yeah.
So another inside thing to do is a great option. And again, there will be 81 home games a year. So it's not like you got to get there on one of 8 weekends or something like that, right?
Like with the Raiders, you would have to, yes.
Yeah. No, you will almost accidentally trip across some home games. So I think it makes me a lot more excited about the summer trips to Vegas just in general. One of my questions, though, is how this is going to impact the other Vegas sports teams. And I'll get to the big league teams in just a second. But what do you think is going to happen to the Aviators, John? Because in the short term, in the 2025 and the 2026 seasons, there is some non-zero possibility that the A's wind up playing their games in the Aviator Stadium. And then after that, it'd be kind of weird. It'd be a weird flex to have the AAA team and the Major League team in the same city, because on the one hand, that's great if you need to assign a player back to AAA, if you need to call up a player when somebody got injured, if you want to, do some evaluation of your own AAA talent. Cool, that makes sense. But gosh, that's going to make it hard for the AAA team to build a fan base. So what do you think the Aviators do?
That's a good question, and I've been thinking about that for a few days now. Dallas, Fort Worth is a very different market than Las Vegas and a much bigger market. The Frisco Rough Riders, who are an affiliate for the Texas Rangers, they do pretty well. But, I mean, it's an hour and 20-minute drive from Frisco down to Arlington where the Rangers play. So I do think there's some evidence that this model can work. And I think the Aviators have a very loyal local following. But yeah, to some degree, this has got to negatively impact their sales, I would think. Although maybe they get creative. I mean, maybe you work out some AAA Major League doubleheader nights and that sort of thing. Maybe there's some marketing opportunities you and I haven't thought of yet. And if I know one thing about Las Vegas, they are really good at figuring out ways to pack people in and take their money.
I have experienced this phenomenon, and I believe it. And that wouldn't be an unpleasant day. Maybe you go catch whichever game comes first. You have a few beers, and then you just make it an entire 6 or 8 hour thing of beer and baseball and all of that. That sounds to me like a fun day.
We hadn't put this on the show notes, but I could not help but think about, you were talking about the size of this stadium. I wonder what luxury boxes are going to look like here. You've got to think for the Vegas market and for the kind of high rollers that come into town. Box seats are going to be a big deal. I wonder if they'll think about doing something like a pool. I think it'd be really cool to see somebody like Derek Stevens from Circa come in and put something like Stadium Swim out in, say, deep right field or something like that.
So they put this on some pretty premium real estate. So there is no way they don't have some luxury features in the stadium, right? There is just no dang way that there aren't some of those.
Right.
The other thing is going to be that because Vegas is the city it is, which has so many visitors, because they have so many tourists coming in, they're going to make some of those premium seating options available for people who just want to buy 1 or 2 days worth of tickets. One of the challenges in a lot of major league stadiums or the top level of whatever the other sport is a lot of times to get those best seats, you have to buy them for the season, which makes sense if you're in Houston or New York or Chicago and you've got a huge local fan base. Most of the people attending the game are from that city. But in Vegas, there's no way that it works out any way other than a lot of tourists attending games. There'll be locals too, obviously, but there's going to be tourists, which means those premium seats, they're going to have options to buy them for day use. Like, I will be shocked if I'm wrong about that.
Well, I would think the major casinos that have big sports books, I'm sure Caesars and BetMGM and maybe even William Hill, that they provide the sports book for a number of smaller properties, including the Plaza, which is one of my favorite small properties in Vegas. You've got to think some of those big sports books are probably going to want some of those seats to offer to their premium players. So there's bound to be some bundle deals that you can get coming into town, things like that. It's hard to imagine they won't do that.
Oh, no, absolutely. And if I'm MGM or if I'm Caesars or whoever, whatever the season ticket options are, I buy some of those so I can give them out to whoever my high rollers are. I'm also curious about how this impacts the other Vegas sports teams. So you will soon have a Major League Baseball team. You've got an NFL team. You've got a National Hockey League team. There's not a basketball team, but you've now got 3 different sports teams. And baseball is a very different game than football or hockey, and it attracts a different fan base. And I guess there's some argument that it could hurt those other 2 teams because it might, distract fans and fan dollars and all that. But I actually think this winds up helping the football and the hockey team because it's now hard to argue against the proposition. Vegas is a major sports city now. They've got 3 major league teams.
And there's been rumors of basketball going there, and I would expect that. Now, they do have WNBA for what that's worth, but I would think eventually you do get an NBA team there. I don't know which one moves. I don't think they'll do an expansion team, but you could see Vegas become a hub for every major sport.
Yeah, no, and that would be a whole lot of fun. So at that point, kind of regardless of when you were there, there's probably going to be some sort of sporting event going on. And I would really enjoy attending a game live when I had $50 or $100 riding on it.
Right. Yeah, I think that'd be a lot of fun. And I, wonder about being able to sit in the stands at the baseball stadium and get on your Caesars app or your BetMGM app or your William Hill and in the 4th inning, pick up a prop bet, how many relievers are going to come in, whatever. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
That would be, and I wish you hadn't said that because now I'm thinking about what all crazy bets I could place in game, right? Oh, yeah. Like when the Astros eventually come to town, how many times will Luis Garcia get called for a pitching clock violation because of that really weird pitching motion he has, which is a whole lot of fun until I wind up coaching my little league kids. And I'm like, cut that out because you're 8 and you can't do the things he does.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think we've pretty well covered baseball. So, Bill, what's new on our YouTube channel?
So on the YouTube channel, I haven't been able to make a trip since the last time you and I did a podcast, but we got one coming up in May, and I will talk about that trip in just a second. One of the things that we've been working on is the website, dinedrinktravel.com, and what I've started to do there is put some print content about the trips to Vegas. That website was originally focused on a lot of the cruises we took, but we're talking more on that now about the trips to Vegas, because sometimes you want to search for something, you don't have time to even watch a fairly short video. So I've been trying to make that more active. I've also been putting stuff on the website about air travel, particularly air travel to and from Vegas, but about air travel in general, airport lounges, things like that. On the YouTube channel, this podcast, which is widely distributed, is also going to be available on the YouTube channel. I'm excited about that because YouTube has now changed their rules just over the last couple of days, although they've been talking about it for months. They've changed their rules to be a podcasting format, but we'll have a big set of content coming out in 3 or 4 weeks after I make a May trip with my buddy Ryan. And I'm going to be there for 3 nights. And what I'm going to do is stay in 3 different hotels, because this is, of course, I'm going to have fun because it's Vegas. So, of course, I'm going to have fun, but it's a working trip. So I'm staying a night at the Treasure Island in one of their tower suites. And y'all, these suites at Treasure Island are one of the best deals in Vegas. They're relatively inexpensive. They're not huge rooms, but they've all got 2 bathrooms, which make it great if you're staying with a group of people, if you want to have some people over to your room to watch whatever game is on or whatever. I'm going to stay at the new Horseshoe. I think my buddy Ryan is staying at Bally's, and I'll get video of that room. I'm also staying at the Bellagio, which used to be my favorite hotel in Vegas. I still love very much, just haven't been in a while. And the thing I'm excited about at the Bellagio is I bought a pass into the VIP lounge because I think a lot of our viewers like seeing what those sorts of options are. Other things that we're going to do, obviously all the different restaurants. And one of the things I want to talk to you about, Ryan and I are going to go eat at a steakhouse I really enjoy inside the Mirage, Heritage Steak. But John, I know you have thoughts about Heritage.
I have relented on my thoughts. So we went there with our wives and with another buddy, Mike, and his wife. And, any place can have a bad meal. And if you've seen our steakhouse video, you know this story. I got one of the worst pieces of meat I've ever been served anywhere. Western Sizzlin', Outback Steakhouse, Denny's. It was a piece of beef that should have never made its way out of their kitchen. But I do have to point out, folks, I do not like to complain. I don't like to care, and I don't like to send things back. I did not tell the server that I was dissatisfied with my steak. I did not talk to the manager. Even a good restaurant, once in a while a plate gets out that the expediter didn't catch. I should have given them the opportunity to make it right. I will say the bar at Heritage is one of my favorite places to catch a high-end cocktail. They know what they're doing. The space is lovely. So I do look forward to your review, and I'm over my bad meal there. I think I would even be willing to give it another shot.
So, fortunately, you don't have to, because I will be there. And I agree with you, folks. If you've never gone to the bar at Heritage, you should absolutely do that.
Without a doubt.
No, the bartenders know their stuff. John said it's a beautiful space. It is, as high-end Vegas cocktails go, not unreasonably expensive. And that's not the same thing as a cheap drink at your local VFW hall.
No.
But, the prices are, for what it is, fine, right? It's a beautiful space. I also enjoy the steaks. They've got it used to be an Australian Wagyu. It is now an American Wagyu skirt steak. So to any God-fearing Texan, what I just said was fajitas, but kind of high-end fajitas that they do as a steak presentation. It is really good. It, for the longest time, was $50-odd. It had last parked at $58. I just looked at their menu today. It's now up to $64. But still, for a half-decent cut of Wagyu at a high-end steakhouse in Vegas, it's about as good a deal as you're going to get.
Absolutely.
And I enjoy that cut of steak. I enjoy their side orders. Also, I was there with my friend Ryan, it's been 5 or 10 years ago now, and there may have been an incident where he got a little bit ill. We're a little bit curious to go back and see if we're both allowed in.
Yeah, although I do imagine that housekeeping for that room is probably more upset than the hotel ownership.
No. Like in the restaurant.
Yeah. Although that would be similar to my incident where I lost a fight with Gravity at Le Cirque, and they let me back in. I do think they kept notes because they laughed at me at my second trip. But Mr. Wilkes, welcome back. But yeah, it is what it is. No, I think that's going to be a good trip for you guys. I look forward to hearing what you have to say. Now, you did say that Ryan is staying at Bally's, which is Horseshoe. So where's Ryan staying again?
To be fair, folks, I have been having cocktails for a little while now, and and you're correct. If you look on the website, though, they sell it as two different things. You can log on. I booked a room at the Horseshoes website, but there is marketing still available as recently as yesterday for Bally's as a separate thing. I'll be honest, I don't even know how that works.
Yeah, I don't either. I would think eventually they would merge those, but sometimes this is a process in Vegas. I think the Mirage is just recently uncoupled from MGM. Cosmo has yet to go fully in, even though they're owned. That's been a process.
So that's actually a piece of Vegas news we should talk about a little bit, is what's going on with the Mirage. So just at the end of this week, they got planning approval to build the dual guitar tower, and officially, the Mirage Volcano is going away, which I'm a little sad. And I get it, why if you're the new owners, you don't want to keep paying for a free attraction that generates you $0 in revenue. Like, I get it. I'm not upset, but it's sad. I enjoyed that. I think that plus the baseball is probably the biggest piece of news. Are there any other pieces of news coming out of Vegas right now, John?
So there have been a lot of changes at Resort World where we're going this September. There's been some rumors around of some bad behavior by one of the nightclub owners. One of the venues that you enjoyed on your trip, I've never done Resorts World, is now becoming a tiki bar. And you and I have very different thoughts on a tiki bar.
We don't have different thoughts. We have different thoughts on how appropriate a tiki bar is right before you pay $300 for a high-end French meal.
There is never a bad time for a tiki drink.
We literally just talked in this episode about we are too old and too ugly to be having woo girl college drinks. If you go into a tiki bar, that's what they're serving you, a great big sugary mug full of something.
I can drink a Mai Tai while wearing a bow tie. It does not bother me to go from the tiki bar to Partage, which we did, and that was a great night.
And specifically a Mai Tai, I can't drink. Folks, I used to live in Mexico City. There may or may not have been an incident where my wife and I went to dinner with my friend Don and his wife. Me and Don may have taken the flowers out of our Mai Tais and put them in our hair as we walked back to our cabin. Not our cabin, to our apartments. I'm sorry, I apparently had a cruise on the mind. As we walked back to our apartments, pictures were taken, and I think our saving grace is this was just far enough back that Facebook wasn't a thing yet, and smartphones weren't a thing, so those only exist in printed copy. But the upshot of that is no Mai Tais. That evening went a little sideways.
Okay, well, fair enough. But we will, listeners, have a report for you after Labor Day on what we think of the new tiki bar, assuming it's open by the time we get there, which I think it will be. Fountain Blue will not be open by that trip. I was looking forward to walking through there. They originally were thinking second quarter for 2023. Now it looks like it's going to be more end of the year, but at least we'll be able to see the exterior finished on that trip.
Well, and you can tell that they're getting closer and closer. I'm really looking forward to that. Also, once Fontaine Bleu opens, then the North Strip winds up being kind of a destination of its own, because if you start from the wind, if the weather's decent, you can walk from the Wynn to Resorts World pretty easily. You can walk from the Resorts World up to Sahara and Fontainebleau. The one hotel, which name must not ever pass my lips, is located just across the street from Resorts World. So, you know what? You've got a decent little area.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm looking forward to that trip. I want to try the Sahara. My wife and I were watching Travel Ruby. She's got a great video. That the way they set up the rooms, I think really it looks great for a couple's trip, to be honest. I want to do a trip up there with my wife. I think she would really love that space. I just want to wait till there's a little bit more to do on that end of the strip, and until it's a little less stabby at night, because not always the best neighborhood in Vegas.
True, but once you've got... So setting aside that one clown-themed hotel, which I refuse to mention, which is right next to Resorts World, setting that aside, and sure, it's a little sketchy. If you've got Wynn and the Resorts World and Fontainebleau and a developing and progressively getting nicer Sahara, I think all of that, those high-end assets eventually start making that end of the Strip even safer, even at night.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's going to be a lot of fun, and I can't wait to see that open up and get a look into that. Maybe that's a reason why I need to plan a December trip. Well, Bill, do we have anything else, or are we putting this one to bed?
I think that is most of the news out of Vegas. I am looking forward to the trip that I am taking. And in our next podcast, isn't our plan to probably talk about pool days in Vegas?
Yes, it is. So we're going to break down pools and hit you with the latest summer news. And that should be, we'll record that right before your trip. And so 2 episodes from now, we'll get your trip report. Folks, that's it for this episode of Dine Drink Vegas. Please remember to follow us on Twitter, either at Dine Drink Travel or at Dine Drink John, which is my account. You can find us on Facebook and, of course, on YouTube. We put out lots of short format videos that give you the information you need without having to watch us eat, which is nice because nobody needs to see a middle-aged man chew food on YouTube.
Faces built for radio, both of us.
Absolutely. And trust me, when we do pools, we're doing the podcast because you don't want us in the swimsuits either.
Oh, dear Lord.
So we will catch you next time. Until then, happy travels.